So with FIFA 21 just around the corner, the demo is estimated to come out around midway through September. So we're hoping around September the 15th. So we can start doing tutorials on FIFA 21 itself. I wanted to go over a few tutorials before FIFA 21 gets released a demo. Something that you could practice in the meantime. The first one is the Elastico skill move. Probably one of the most effective skill moves to use, especially inside the box. We've seen this many times. First of all, most importantly, it is a 5-star skiller. So with the example of Neymar, the most important thing is the right analog stick. Now, I'll explain to you how this all works in a second, but I just wanted to explain to you mainly that the Elastico skill move is one of the most universal skill moves. There's two variations, reverse Elastico. So imagine you're facing upwards. There's this one over here, and then there is this one. Now, there is two different variations. The normal Elastico, which this one over here is the one that's probably, I would say, the most used and the most effective. We'll get on to that in a second. But the most important thing is just remember, it is a 5-star skill move only. There's one thing I wanted to also notify you is that there is some changes to skill moves. The reason why we didn't focus on skill moves too much for 20 is because I want you to have a core base. But now many of you have joined FIFA School already, you're already existing users. You want to go take that step to the next level, should I say. These skill moves are only to be used inside the box to create space. The first thing is now you can chain up to 3 times as opposed to 2. So that means essentially next year you can spam the Elastico as many times as you want. Now obviously it's not a viable thing to do, but in theory if you have the ball with, for example, someone like a 5-star skiller, you can basically start an Elastico and then keep chaining it. Now obviously depending on which direction you're facing, Elastico will change, but there is this thing that's known that if you spin the right analog stick after one Elastico, you start doing Elasticos in a row, as you can see. And as you can see, after I go past 2, you see how the first one, second one, the ball goes further away, third one, the ball goes even further away. So last year it was 2, they now made it 3. So this year you can do 3 Elasticos in a row in theory without you losing the ball. So do bear that in mind. So that's why the Elastico skill move will be a very effective one next year, and you will see me using it a lot. There's other things that have gone away with it as well. You've got normal skill moves that have improved without the ball going too far away from you. That is, for example, the heel-to-heel, fake shot, and stop and turn. The reason why this is also important next year is skill moves are very much restricted by whichever players you have. You would see, for example, players like R9 can only perform, for example, the 5-star skill moves, or someone like Neymar on the cheaper option. So any 5-star skiller can perform the Elastico. But let's say, for example, a good example would be someone like, let's say you had Aubameyang. Now, Aubameyang is a decent player. Now, although his agility and balance is not that good, he has a 4-star weak foot and 4-star skill moves, so that gives you the ability to do multiple skill moves. The issue lies then is that when players don't have a 4-star skill move, so you might, for example, I know this might be an odd example, but let's just say we took Kante. Now, let's just say, imagine for this example, because Kante is a very well-known used player, because Kante has a 4-star skill move, in theory, it's no point teaching you how to do the heel-to-heel, because the heel-to-heel will be a 4-star skill move only. But now what they've done is they've now made every single player be able to do certain skill moves. So basically anyone can do, for example, a low-level version of a heel-to-heel or a roulette or a feint and exit or a stop and turn. So basically, essentially how it works is if someone's got a 4-star skill moves, they can execute the skill move perfectly. Someone's got a 3-star skill moves, maybe they can only execute it, I would say, around 45 to 50% as well as someone with a 4-star weak foot, so it's much more slower. So just imagine the more you go down, so if you're a 2-star skill move doing a 4-star skill move, so for example, a stop and turn is a 4-star skill move, you have a 2-star skill move player do it, it is very, very slow and almost unusable, so that's something to bear in mind as well. They've also changed some things just to give you a bit of an insight, like the drag back is going to be remapped, but we'll go over that as well. And certain players, for example, can be able to do the drag back a bit better, certain animations, and obviously it will be made slower for lower skill move rating players. I'm not too happy with that. I wish it was just universally fine, but the lower skill players won't be as effective with it, so that you can bear in mind. You can of course chain skill moves like ball rolls, step overs without penalty, so you can just essentially just spam. So you could, in fact, if you're in, it's just assuming you're in the game right now, if you have the ball, all you have to do literally is just have the ball at your feet and you can just spam the ball roll. There is no actual penalty regarding that. Now don't forget, the ball roll can be done as many times as you want, as long as the direction you're facing does change. Don't forget you have to change it as you move the direction as well. So as you can see, my right analog stick is moving along with the direction, so do bear that in mind. But that is something that is taken into account. But let's go straight away into the Elastico, because that's the reason why we've mainly gone into this tutorial. How you do the Elastico? The Elastico is a very simple skill move to do. You need to face the goal first. Now the most important thing is depending on the direction you're facing, the elastico will change. In theory, let's just imagine, for example, we're going to look from left, attacking from left to right, because there's only going to be 2 attacking positions. If you go into the arena, because you're facing the player head on and the camera angle is from behind, it's not a good way to practice it. You want to go into skill moves. Now, there's 2 versions of the elastico. There's a normal elastico, which is basically you move the right analog stick and you flick it like this. So basically the right analog stick, you flick it like this. So I'm going to flip my right stick up and then turn it around. That's how you want to do it. So imagine you want to do it when you're ideally when you're jogging or when you're walking or when you're standing still. You cannot run and do the skill move. Otherwise, you can't run and do any skill moves, because what happens is that your player just smacks it away, as you can see. So what you want to essentially do is you want to get the ball again and you want to move the right analog stick up and then around. And that's how you do the elastico. That is the first way of doing it. So that is the normal. So it depends on the direction you're facing, but that is one way of the elastico. In this case, this is the reverse elastico. So just to keep things simple, the first way we're going to talk about is the reverse elastico. The second way is probably the most effective one. Again, depends on the region you're facing. Is just basically the opposite. So basically what you're doing is a backwards U. So the red one is basically the reverse elastico, and the yellow one is the normal elastico. The normal elastico is the most effective. As you can see, we're going to do a normal one now like that. It is the most effective one because the ball goes further away from you. So let's just say, for example, you're over here. If, for example, you're inside the box. Now, if you try to do a normal elastico like so, you're going away from goal. So that's why the reverse elastico is only really to be used, for example, in situations like this, where you do the elastico like that and cut inside. But as you can see, the animation isn't as fluid. As you can see, the ball doesn't go away too much. And it's only if someone is literally directly in front of you, then you'll probably go past. Otherwise, normally a fake shot probably will have the same impact. So I'll be honest, you're better off doing a fake shot to keep things simpler. And you're better off doing an elastico, for example, if you're facing like this. But again, don't forget, depending on the direction you face, the angle will change. So essentially, the way you finish your right analog stick. So for example, like here, if I do it like this, wherever your right analog stick, the final point is where the ball will end. So for example, like here, if you do an elastico, for example, facing this way, then the ball will end that way. So bear in mind that, remember, the exit point will define which way you're going. So again, if I move the right analog stick from the top from the left and I move all the way around, as you can see, I go to the right hand side. So do bear that in mind. But again, the most effective one is to use when you're kind of facing like this and you do the elastico like that. Again, the rest of elastico there is not worth it. It's the opposite way. So when you go that way and you turn like this, and that is the most effective one to use. As I said, it might take you some time to get used to it. There is 2 ways of doing it, and another way you can do it is you can spam the right analog stick like that. I wouldn't really recommend it. Just try to do a backwards use. Whichever way you're facing, just try to do a backwards use. Now don't forget, it really will depend on which way you're facing. Don't forget, again, if I move uppers like this and I do the elastico like this, that way it will go like that. Whereas if I do the exact same thing, but I face the other way, as you can see, it's a different kind of, almost different, same skill move, but different direction of exit. So do bear that in mind. I'll be honest, I would just say, just for now, focus on doing this elastico. I think it's the easiest one, is that you start on the right hand side with the right analog stick and you move it to the left hand side. It is the one that I would say is probably the most easiest for you to learn. So like this in the back and like that U shape, as you can see. So whenever you're running, so like here, U shape like that. Just try to get in the habit of doing that. And don't forget, remember, also try to start on the way you're facing. So if you're facing downwards like that, just try to put yourself in the shoes of the player, and this situation, do it backwards. So obviously do remember that it will just depend on the direction you're facing. It's a very effective skill move to use in the final third. If, for example, there is a defender in the way, or let's say, for example, you're side on goal here. If you're standing still, and let's say you've got nowhere to go, the Elastico is a really good skill move because you can literally get out of the situation just by turning. But don't forget, you might end up doing this in the beginning where you kind of try to go forward like this. Just remember, you have to be facing the direction first and doing a backwards U. So remember, it's always a backwards U. And try to make the animation as fluid as possible. If, for example, you try to roll your hands across, for example, like let's say like this, it doesn't really work that well. And if you take too long, it ends up doing a ball roll. So it has to be almost a swift animation that has to be done in literally almost half a second. So just practice going around and flicking like this. Just practice flicking it backwards, running, stopping, and just flicking it. Have a little go of it, and then once you get used to it, you'll be able to get into a situation where you can use it at very good angles. Here I just want to show you a brief example. This is a clip from a stream. And as you can see, I have the ball here with Mahrez. Now Mahrez is a player with 5-star skill moves, and don't forget the Elastico cannot be performed by someone who doesn't have a 5-star skill moves. They need to have 5-star skill moves. In contrast to that document that I showed you earlier, that document is a bit different. So if we go back to that document, it says, for example, there's low level skill. For example, you have the low skill roulette and stuff like that. That will really just depend merely on the players. So anywhere from 1 to 4-star skill moves, anyone can do. 5-star skill moves, only 5-star skill move players or players that have the 5-star skill moves can do it. So for example, like N'Golo Kante cannot do a weak version of the Elastico. So just do remember that. Going back into the example over here, so we can see we have the ball over here with Mahrez. He's got 5-star skill moves. Now again, if I do an Elastico over here, there's two things. If I do an Elastico like this, as I said, a backwards U, then remember, the exit point is the direction you'll be facing. So he'll end up doing the Elastico like that. I don't want him to do Elastico that way. I want him to do a reverse Elastico. So the other way, so I want him to do it like this. And that means his exit is going to be like that. I'm just going to slow this down for you. And you can see with my right arm, so I'm slow it down to about 0.30. So 33% of what it roughly would be. And as you can see, if you focus on the right analog stick at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see, for example, the movement. So again, the right analog stick, as you can see, I flick it all the way, as you can see, to the left, and I go all the way around. You see that? So I'm just going to replay that segment again because I went over it a bit too quickly. But don't forget as well, you see how I let go of the run button? You see I'm not holding a run button when I do it. I let go of the run button first, control the ball, so make sure I take an additional touch, because if you hold the run button and do the skill move straight away, what will happen is if you try doing it, your player will just knock the ball away. So don't forget, run, let go of the run button, take a touch first, and then once you've taken a touch, then you perform the reverse Elastico. As you can see, I go from the left hand side on the right analog stick, and I go all the way around. Ignore this left analog stick. This was just unfortunately positioned that way. But when you're doing the Elastico, you don't want to touch the left analog stick ideally. Some people do it, like for example you see in the situation over here, but just to make this a more of a clean approach, try not to use the left analog stick whatsoever. And you can see I use reverse Elastico, I created the angle, and then I take a shot towards goal. And that was a very simple goal that I scored from that situation. So here we have another example. As you can see, my opponent is kind of pushes goalkeeper out too much. He ball the ball away, and I get the ball back into the box. Now as you can see over here, this way I want to do an Elastico the other way. Now don't forget again, I'm not holding a run button. And remember, there's two Elasticos. If I do the Elastico, as I said, like this, then I'll exit this way. I don't want to exit that way, remember, because that's the end point. I want to do the other way. So this situation will be the normal Elastico, should I say. So I want my player to make that kind of flip-flap type animation. As you can see again, if you focus on the right analog stick, you can see I move it just all the way around. And as you can see, I spin it just a tad bit. Now, this is not the end of the world. I'm just going to slow this down. I spin this once. And as you can see, the animation doesn't really continue, so I just span it again just to guarantee it. You don't have to do it. If you do spin it twice like that, sometimes it might do a double animation. But in this situation, because the game was lagging, I realized the player was not doing the animation, so I forced it again. But in all honesty, even if I didn't do it twice, it would have still performed the Elasticos. As you can see, I went like this, went all the way around, and I let go. So just do bear that in mind. The reason why it didn't perform it straight away is because it thought to register another skill move straight after. But as you can see, the initial skill movement is the most important thing. Got the ball over here with the right analog stick all the way around like so. I exited, create the flip-flap movement around the slide tackle, and then slotted it into the back of the net.